Good morning. Welcome to the presentation today. Many of you were here in church first service and heard Pastor Braun preach already. He's retired now, had been a parish pastor in 3 different churches, was at Northwestern College during the time when it was their amalgamation, combining Northwestern College with Dr. Martin Luther College in New Ulm, Minnesota. He was at Northwestern Publishing House after that. He was editor of Forward in Christ. He's known for loving history. So he's here for 1 hour to take us through all of WELS history in 60 minutes, right? Right? Some of you have been coming to Pastor Tom Avon McKinney, been going through this a little bit more slowly the last few weeks. There also is a book he helped put together. It's called Christ Through Us, A Pictorial History of the Wisconsin Synod. I'm going to pass these copies around, starting one on this side of the room, one on that side. If you're looking for something that you could read on your own, I like all the pictures in here, and it gives a summary of who we are and where we've come from as our church body. So with that, let me turn it over to him. I'll pass these around. God bless our hour here talking about this together.
Thank you, Pastor. I hope this is working now. I'm going to give you a lecture on history. Oh, good. I can hear the screams already. History is kind of a boring subject for some people. I'd like to have you think of it as a journey into a foreign country. And I hope I'm going to introduce to you a number of people here who have struggled through some difficulties and who have led us through some difficulties. They're the same kind of problems that we all have, the same kind of people that we are. They treasured Jesus the same way you do. So I'm hoping that in this little excursion into the past, you'll view it as a journey to a foreign country. So we want to take a look at the Synod's history from its beginning. All I have to do is figure out how this thing works again. Some of you may know this, maybe you don't. America and the Northwest Territory. You know about the Louisiana Purchase. This is before the Louisiana Purchase. The Northwest Territories were deeded to the United States at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War. And so this territory was all new. It was different from the seaboard, the eastern seaboard. And what happened, of course, is that once this territory was there, then people thought, aha, let's move. Let's leave Europe. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Let's see if I can, now what did I do? Hey, there we go. They came to the United States usually to get a better life. But there was another underlying current at work as well. It was religious freedom. In Germany, at the 1817, Germany attempted to unify Lutherans and Reformed churches into a single body. And Lutherans came to the United States. Some of them settled, as at sea, in New York and Pennsylvania. Gettysburg, by the way, if you didn't know this, is the oldest Lutheran seminary in the United States. It was established in 1826. Then the Lutherans kind of flow into 2 different camps. First, there are the strict Lutherans, the old Lutherans. Those are the Lutherans that were Lutheran and did not want to mix with the Reformed churches. They settled in Perry, Missouri, and they formed the Missouri Synod. And then there's another group that comes to the United States. They are Lutherans who are scattered throughout the Midwest, this Northwest Territory, and they were called mild Lutherans. And Muhlenberg was among those mild Lutherans. When they came through what then was the superhighway, the interstate highway, the Erie Canal. And so they came into New York, got on the Erie Canal, traveled all the way to Lake Ontario, Some of them settled here, and then they got on boats and went to Detroit and Wisconsin. But this was the superhighway of the 1800s. So they came, and I'm going to talk about three different synods at first. The Michigan Synod, Pastor Schmidt, he came to New York, traveled the Erie Canal to Detroit in 1833. This is the first church in Michigan, first Lutheran church in Michigan. He established a Michigan Synod together with a number of other people that was concerned about doing mission work among the Native Americans. That synod collapsed. It didn't work. But he worked throughout Michigan, gathering Lutherans together. And Muhlenberg is the pastor who started the Wisconsin Synod. He started out as a baker in Germany, studied in Basel, served Lutheran and Reformed Church in Rochester, New York. And he got a letter from one of his friends who was in Wisconsin, said, "You have to come to Wisconsin. It's a good place to spread the gospel." Muhlenberg came to Milwaukee as a peddler of Bibles and religious material. And during that time, he establishes Grace Lutheran Church in Milwaukee. To get here, this is the guy that sent the letter, Johannes Weinman. And then him and Weedy, three pastors that formed the Wisconsin Synod in Granville in May 26, 1850. They had met a year before and thought this was a good thing to do, so they did. There were two other pastors there with them, one from Slinger, who didn't sign the Articles of Incorporation, but there were two others there. This is the first meeting, the first church. It's still there. If you get a chance to go back into Milwaukee and you're a history buff, you may want to go into this. There's a plaque honoring him in Pennsylvania. And he became then, in 1849, a missionary to India. He spent 15 years in India. And that is a rather remarkable thing. Some of the churches, some of the things he established back at that point are still there in India. Then he comes to Twin Cities and then establishes the Minnesota district. That's where I mentioned before he's called the Father. He's an older gentleman and has a great deal of talent and energy. After he left Minnesota and established a synod, he returned to India and then to Philadelphia. Now, what is interesting about this is, remember, this is pioneer stuff. There are no cars, no highways, nothing. Well, maybe not nothing. There are a lot of farmers, a lot of hardworking German farmers. And so what they did is that they settled in places in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan, and established their farms and wanted to worship. And this guy, Frederick Fachman, is just an amazing guy. He came here, was authorized by Muehlhäuser in Milwaukee as the circuit pastor for this Wisconsin Synod. And now this traces his steps. He went into this foreign land, this pioneer area, and traveled to Watertown, Columbus, Beaver Dam, Hustisford, then also up to Two Rivers, Sheboygan, New London, Fond du Lac, on foot. He's walking gathering Lutherans, giving them communion and the message of the Savior, and goes on. And he is collecting these people, and they're trying to establish congregations, which from the names I mentioned, you see he did. These Christians got together and they began forming congregations. But he also, here's another trip. This is the second trip he took. And then he finds himself over in La Crosse. He's a restless character. He can't sit still. And so what he does, he goes to La Crosse, travels up the Mississippi River, and ends up here in St. Paul with Hire in the Minnesota Synod. And now we're going to take a little break here from establishing these synods and give you one of the reasons that we're here today, that I'm here today, I suppose. More congregations need pastors. Fachman knew that, Hire knew it, Schmidt knew it, so did Millenheiser. And finally, John Botting was a pastor who came from a German mission society. Most of the pastors came from German mission societies. And those mission societies sent pastors to the New World. And they sent them, they were established as Lutheran Reformed mission societies. They were not strictly Lutheran, they were Lutheran Reformed. So these guys are coming from Germany into Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. But they're not coming in very large numbers. And when they come, they couldn't always be sure that they were teaching the truth. John Botting was an exception. He came to this country. He was a confirmed Lutheran. And when he was ordained by Millenheiser, Millenheiser was kind of a mild Lutheran. It's okay. As long as they trust in Jesus, they're okay. He was a mild Lutheran. And Botting crossed out the stipulation that they had to be committed to the Lutheran confessions. Botting said, no, when you ordain me, I'm going to pledge to follow the Lutheran confessions. So he becomes one of the first pastors who is committed to Lutheranism. And he ends up in Watertown, Wisconsin, becomes the president of the synod after Millenheiser. And in St. Mark's, this area becomes known. There's a conference, the Northwestern Conference. Botting is a part of it. Kaler is a part of it. And these guys wanted this synod not to be mild. They wanted this synod to be Lutheran, Orthodox, firm, confessing Lutherans. And when they realized that they weren't getting very many pastors from Germany and that the quality wasn't always that great, Botting finally said, we can't and should not depend on Germany. We must dig a well in our own country, in our own synod, that will supply workers. That changes the synod. Wisconsin Synod establishes its first seminary, 1863. If you've been to Watertown, this house is still standing. There's a little plaque on the corner that says this is the first seminary. And the first professor is Professor Moldenke. Minnesota also wants to do the same thing. We're not getting very many pastors, and we're not getting very good ones. So in 1884, Minnesota establishes the college to train pastors at New Ulm. Pastor Albrecht becomes the president of the Minnesota district, and he is encouraging that growth. 1884. Michigan does the same thing about the same time. 1885. This is the first Michigan seminary. It's in Manchester. It is in Manchester because a layman in Manchester said, look, you want to start a seminary? I'll give you a house for 2 years to use for that seminary training. And that's why it ends up in Manchester. 2 years later, he had to use the house for something else. And so Michigan builds another seminary, Michigan Lutheran Seminary. Now you still know that name, Michigan Lutheran Seminary. Have you ever wondered why it's a high school, right? Why did it stay seminary? Because of the history. Because it had this background. It was a seminary at one time. Northwestern University. Now, what's interesting here is that between the seminary in Watertown, at that house in Watertown, kind of fell apart. And the Wisconsin Synod chose to have its graduates, its young men trained for ministry through the Missouri Synod. So between 1870 and 1878, Wisconsin Synod pastors were trained at Concordia in St. Louis. That didn't mean that they didn't want their school. They established a Northwestern University in Watertown in 1865. This is the first building out there in the middle of nowhere. And then, in order to build that school, Pastor Bading went to Germany. He went to Germany to raise funds. We want to build a college in Minnesota, or in Wisconsin. And his travels through Germany got him even to Russia, where he's raising money for this school. Well, he comes back, and there's always some tension between the Wisconsin Synod and the mission societies in Germany. And when he comes back, then finally, in 1868, Wisconsin Synod breaks ties with the Mission Society. Now you can understand what that meant to the people in Germany. You ungrateful people? And that's the attitude they had, but they made this choice. We didn't get all the money anyway. They held back some of the money. But we had a new school. It's called Northwestern University. Now this guy is here only to give you a little flavor of a man, a layman. This is a layman who came to the United States from Germany. His name is George Braun. He came to this country, worked in Hustisford clearing land. That's the first thing he did, clear land. Well, he moved to Milwaukee, and he laid the tracks for the Milwaukee streetcars. So this is him coming into this country. He cleared land in Helenville. Did I say Hustisford? Sorry. Helenville, moved to Milwaukee, laid streetcar tracks. He started a bookstore and printed Germania. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of that. Probably not. I didn't before I started doing the research. Germania was the largest German weekly newspaper in the United States. So he became quite influential, and he became the publisher of Wisconsin Synod materials. And what makes him so interesting, one of the things, is that he's the brother-in-law to two Synod presidents, President Rime and President Straguth. They were both presidents while Bading was off in Germany. He owned Boston Baseball Club of the American Baseball League. I think at that time they weren't called the Red Sox. They were called the Americans. And a friend came to him and asked and said, I got a deal. Have I got a deal for you? The Boston team was on the bottom of the league at that time. They needed financial support, so Brumber did it. He bought the team. The next year they won the pennant. Now, if I didn't hear this anywhere, but this is my guess what happened. Well, he's an astute businessman. So the next year, what did he do with the team? He sold it for a profit. So here, was a lifelong member of Grace in Milwaukee. If you go to Grace in Milwaukee and you're there, you face the front of the church. On the left-hand side, there are windows that are dedicated to this man. He's a layman who worked his way through the fields of Wisconsin, laying track, and ultimately became a member and was a publisher for a lot of our stuff. There were other faithful Lutherans. We moved to being faithful Lutherans, and we had started to have contact with the Missouri Synod already because of the training of our pastors. And then the Synodical Conference was formed in 1862. The Ohio Synod sent out an invitation. We got to get together. We firm Lutherans have to get together so we can do work together. And that came to be constituting convention at St. John's, Milwaukee in 1872. Now, part of the Synod, this is an area that I have never learned, I learned way back when, but it's got fuzzy. But there is a Synodical Conference mission to African Americans in the South. Some of you may have heard about it. This is an African American mission to the South, in the South, into Alabama, in particular Alabama and down in that area. The Alabama Lutheran Academy, and there was a college established, the Emmanuel Lutheran College in Greensboro, North Carolina. Believe it or not, when I came to Northwestern in 1865. I'm not that old. I may be old, but not that old. When I came, we had a classmate who was there for a year, who came from North Carolina, and he came from Greensboro. So he was there. He was a young African American, and became actually the president of our class for a year. Here's another interesting person, Rosa Young. She became a Lutheran when she heard one of these missionaries to the South preach. And she said, that's what I want to believe. And she did. And she trained herself and went to school to be a teacher. And she became a dominant influence in this area. She is the only woman given an honorary doctorate by Concordia Seminary. That's her position, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to include this, because it's an interesting part of our history. When we talk about our history, we're talking about up north mostly, and not further south until much later. But this, and so not only did the synods, Ohio, Missouri, Illinois, and so on, join in the Synodical Conference, the Wisconsin Synod now starts to get together with these other synods, and they establish a joint Evangelical Lutheran Synod. They all stay Minnesota, or stay separate. They're still their separate synods, but now they're joined together as a joint synod. October 1892. Now, new congregations, I found this interesting. I hope this maybe not rings a couple bells. You know this guy? St. Paul's? He's the first pastor at St. Paul's. Here's the first building, St. Paul's. 1893, the first service was held here. And this should look familiar. Look like downtown, maybe? Lake Mills? All right, here's, at any rate, I thought I'd just throw that in, keep you interested. Then when this federated synod got together, 1896, we had trouble from Michigan. What the Joint Synod did was to say, look, we have 3 pastor training schools. Let's find some way to handle that. Well, they did. Watertown was supposed to be the Synod school for pastors. New Ulm, now Dr. Martin Luther College, was the school for teachers. What do we do with Michigan Lutheran Seminary? Well, let's make it a prep school. Well, everybody in the Synod agreed to that, except a few people in Michigan. And so there's a division over that decision. And so there are 2 Michigan synods for a couple of years. Protest. It all got smoothed over. They were eventually reunited, and they did accept the change to MLS being a high school. And so Michigan Lutheran Seminary is reopened then in 2010, 1910. I get the centuries wrong. But there's a fire in Watertown in 1894. This is the building you saw about Northwestern University. Lightning struck it. It burned to the ground. Well, not to the ground. You can see that it didn't go to the ground. It's made out of brick. But it was, the fire consumed everything possible. And there was one lady who came after the fire and looked at the building, and she said, well, this is the end of your synod. This is the end of the college. There was a special edition of the Gemeindeblatt, which was the synod periodical at the time. And this is the only extra special issue of the Gemeindeblatt announcing the fire. But Northwestern didn't die. A new building was replaced the old one, and in 1912, the gymnasium was donated to the college. Northwestern has a marching band. I put this one in here for you too. Does this look familiar? The street again. This is Northwestern College's marching band. Long time ago. Seminary now, for Wisconsin Synod Seminary now is reestablished in Milwaukee, on Reservoir Street, and that starts the Wisconsin in establishing its own congregation, its own seminary, and it's all partly because of this man. Adolf Heinecke came here to the United States. He called to St. Matthew's in Milwaukee. I can't spell Milwaukee, I guess. But then we reestablished the seminary with him as a primary professor. And until his death in 1918, he was one of the dominant theologians for the Wisconsin Synod. The name Heinecke should ring a bell to some of you, I hope. Maybe not all of you, but some of you. Eventually they ran out of room in that place, and so they had to establish the Wauwatosa Seminary in 1892. This is the building in Wauwatosa. I served St. James in Milwaukee, which was directly across the street. Not from this building. This building is gone, but this is across the street from where the seminary used to be. Now it's a Catholic agency. and we'll see what happened to the seminary. But this Wauwatosa Seminary served the synod for many, many years. Northwestern Publishing House comes on the scene in 1891, and then the synod decides to establish its first foreign mission work. And what did they do? They went to Arizona and decided to do mission work among the Apache Nation. And this is Geronimo and his warriors. And the Wisconsin Synod is working down there, establishing that mission in 1893. That is not a secret to any of you. I don't believe it's a secret to any of you. But these two people came down. They're primarily responsible for the beginning. This is Anna, and I put this little sewing machine in here again, demonstrate how, you know, the Lord blesses us and he asks us to use our talent to spread the gospel. Here's Anna, who comes down to Arizona, is married to the pastor, and she uses her sewing machine to make clothes for the women, the Apache women, and their children. When you come to Arizona, you have to understand, at this time, you have to understand that the Apache Nation did not have a written language. And it was all oral. And these guys who came from Milwaukee or Wisconsin, what did they know? Ach ja, Deutsch, nur Deutsch. And they got down to Arizona and had difficulty with the language. One of them came back to the United States, came back to Wisconsin because he couldn't speak couldn't learn the Apache language. And so they sent a replacement. One of the replacements was Harder's. I don't know if any of you have read any of Harder's books. He wrote some books about Apache society. He served the mission for 11 years. This is a typical Apache dwelling. And then, of course, the war came. And the war brings all kinds of problems to the United States, including our own young men. Our own young men went to Germany. Here's, Bob, you know who Robert Voss is? Anybody know who Robert Voss is? Never. Anyway, he was the president, yeah, you do. He was president of Northwestern College. This is his father-in-law. And his daughter told me that he's sitting on that horse because he borrowed it from the lieutenant. And somebody took his picture. Let's see, where am I? Trouble with those Germans in 1914, Northwestern Lutheran. This is the Gemeindeblatt. The Gemeindeblatt continued as part of our publication. There were a lot of Germans still speaking German and using German in their everyday life. The Northwestern Lutheran was established in 1914 as a start in doing more work among the English and reaching out to the English. Now, these four synods, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. Anybody remember Nebraska? Where did Nebraska come from? Does anybody know the story where Nebraska came from? Nebraska came from a group of people in Ixonia who didn't like what was going on. And they decided, look, we're upset with this. Let's get rid of everything. Let's sell everything. Let's move. And they sent somebody to Nebraska to do the scouting. The guy came back and said, yeah, Nebraska's a good place to come. And so they left Ixonia in covered wagons. The women and children took the wagons and rode in the wagons. The men walked, and they took their animals as well. So here's this entourage, 53 wagons on their way to Nebraska. And they settled in Norfolk, and that's where the Nebraska district came from. At any rate, we're here, northern Wisconsin, and then when the synods, those four synods merge, they change into districts. Wisconsin Synod becomes 3 districts: northern Wisconsin, western Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin, Minnesota district, Michigan Synod, and Nebraska over here. Then Pastor Bergman, again, a remarkable person, was president of the synod at the time, and he traveled over 20,000 miles to attend all of the district conventions when this merger came about. That's without airfare. He traveled the railroads. He traveled whatever he could to get to these places, including getting to the Pacific Northwest, which was added as a district in 1920. And then the Dakota-Montana district, which had been a part of the Minnesota district shortly after that. Then the synod in 1928 established Northwestern Lutheran Academy in Mobridge. Mobridge has an interesting name. You know why it is called Mobridge? I think it was the Pacific Northwest Railroad built a railroad track through the northern part of the United States, and they confronted the Missouri River, and they had to build a bridge for the railroad tracks over the Missouri River. The Missouri Bridge. That's where Mobridge got its name. And the first building that they built was this white building. It served them for many years. A new seminary then, the Wauwatosa Seminary disappears. New seminary in Thiensville at that time, called Thiensville. This is the largest group of Wisconsin Synod people together in one place ever. This is the dedication of that seminary. Then go back, just a brief review of Apache Mission. I wanted to do that for this guy principally. This is Francis Upliger. He wrote the language out for the Apache language out. What he did, his written work is in a university somewhere in California, if I remember right. It's not UCLA, but there's a smaller university in Los Angeles where his work is. And the other reason it's here is Chief Alchazay became a dominant force in the Apache Mission and in establishing Lutheranism there. And of course, the babies, the nursery. Some of you may remember that. Now, the Synodical Conference, one of the reasons for telling you about the Synodical Conference mission in the South is to get to this point. The Synodical Conference decides they want to go to Nigeria. And it happens because the Nigerians sent Jonathan to Concordia to say, okay, we want to call you over to Nigeria. Will you do some work for us? Will you help us in Nigeria? And so the Synodical Conference sent a exploratory team in 1934. There's a Wisconsin Synod man a part of that. What came out of that is that there was a mission established in Nigeria by the Synodical Conference. And this guy, and his friend, this is Schweppe, who is a Wisconsin Synod pastor. He was the head of this work in Nigeria. And if you can, you can't see it, it's too fuzzy. You have to trust me. Over here is my pastor who confirmed me, George Bear. He was in Africa, came back to the United States, and my pastor is over here with his wife. So there were a number of our pastors over there in Nigeria with this effort. Then comes the Great Depression. No money. Now this is going to be a theme for almost the rest of the history. There's no money. No building plans, little maintenance, couldn't do that. Pay for professors and missionaries is often deferred. John Braun, who is the president of the synod at the time, the conference, the establishment said, we will try to cut salaries of professors because they can get their food in the cafeteria of the schools. So that's one of the ways in which they solved some of the financial problems. Some seminary graduates had no calls. And then we come out of this particular difficulty, out of it with the Michigan Plan by Pastor Edgar Haneke. And this is one of his work. He said, we've got to publicize this. This is where we are. Look at all of our debt. Our people need to contribute to pay down the debt. And they did. And the Second World War also brought about more soldiers going not only to Europe, but to the Pacific. Here's pictures of people at work, soldiers worshiping at Camp McCoy in Wisconsin. Pastor Scharf over here is a civilian chaplain in Louisiana. And what comes out of this then, besides this, is Wisconsin Synod needs to get the word to these soldiers. And so the Spiritual Welfare Commission is established to serve them, and that has led to a lot of publication after that in a lot of different ways. Second missionary trip, exploratory trip to Africa. This time it's a Wisconsin Synod trip to Africa. And this is the mission bus, truck, four-wheel drive. Pastor Edgar Haneke, Arthur Walker, both travel this part of Africa looking for the possibilities to establish a mission in Africa. That takes place. There is a mission which here is listed as Rhodesia. At the time it was Rhodesia. It's now something else. And these are our home missions, and then you can see that we're beginning to expand into the world. We're at 1953 here. Florida mission work is an interesting story. Florida is down here, Wisconsin is up here. Michigan's a little closer, but it's not, there's a lot of territory between Michigan and Florida as well. And the resolution of the Synod was no mission work in any state doesn't have an adjoining mission in that state. Well, there was nothing in Georgia, nothing in Carolina, so there's just nothing. There are no other congregations. But Lewis was on the mission board of Michigan. He said, "I have a house in Florida. Why don't you come down and see if we can establish some congregations in Florida?" So they bypassed the resolution of the Synod, sent people down, and Florida is the result. And then from that point, we're moving to Los Angeles and other parts of the country. And then comes a difficult time of the Synod, and that's the conflict with the Missouri Synod over doctrine. At the time, these booklets were presented to our congregations and people to demonstrate what the differences were. And it comes down to everything comes down to keeping Christ the center of what we do. Example, chaplaincy question. Who has control of the pastors, the government or the synod? And what can these pastors say and do? What should they do? If you're a chaplain of the government, then you have to serve all kinds of different denominations. And that meant you watered down Christ and the message of forgiveness. So it came down to Christ in a lot of different ways. It was a hard time. It was a difficult time. The two synods had been together for a long, long time, and this was the break in 61. It came about 124 to 49. It was on the table for the conventions previous to that. It was not accepted. They wanted to give Missouri time to react. When the synod rejected that resolution in an earlier synod, then some of our congregations left. They no longer wanted to be part of the Wisconsin Synod because we weren't going fast enough. Our message wasn't clear. So they became another church body, Lutheran Churches of the Reformation, and established their own school and their own churches. Now, what's going on here besides, we're going to leave that behind us a little bit, area Lutheran high schools. The Wisconsin Lutheran was the first area Lutheran high school in Milwaukee in 1903. It was a joint school with Missouri Synod. And it's still there, but not as a joint school anymore. There's Milwaukee Lutheran and Wisconsin Lutheran. And so I think it was 1954, they broke apart. And so there's a Wisconsin Synod high school and a Missouri Synod high school. They both have football programs, and if you listen to sports, you can hear both of them referred to from time to time. They both have, over the years, have had some pretty good football teams. But this is the list of current, somewhere. This is the list of current area Lutheran high schools. Great Plains here, and then also Wisconsin Lutheran College. Wisconsin Lutheran College has an interesting history, which we probably won't be able to go into. But here's these financial challenges in 1993. The Synod, or the Board for Worker Training at the time, faced with the financial difficulties, said, we have to do something. And they came with 3 proposals: increase synodical offerings, reallocate funds and retain the current structure, close MLPS and NPS, but keep NWC and DMLC on their current campuses. Well, the convention threw out those resolutions and decided amalgamate the 2 colleges in New Ulm and amalgamate the 2 prep schools in Watertown. And that's what happened. And there's the amalgamation of construction and all of that stuff. In 1995, there were 2 colleges now, Martin Luther College and then Watertown, the Watertown School, Luther Prep School. But the problems, financial problems didn't go away. They kind of disappeared for a little while, but they came back. And in 2019, the convention floor committee met and proposed that the thing that the Synod needs to do first and foremost, its first priority, fund the schools, do mission work. And that's what happened. That led us out of some of the financial difficulties. That gets us to the Chapel of Christ in New Ulm. This is the dedication for that building. And then there's a lot more to consider. If you have some questions, I can try and answer them for you. Some of the things that you may want to think about, mission work. Our mission work spreads through the world, where Lutheran seminaries are established in different places. We have also gotten together with other confessional Lutheran around the world. This is the Confessional Evangelical Lutheran Conference, the CELC. Here's another picture of seminary students in another part of the world. We have also done videos. And what's interesting is that the growth of the Synod occurs probably at this point in early childhood ministry. A lot of congregations are establishing early childhood ministries and are pulling people from that they contact in those missions, in those early childhood centers, into their membership. We've published new hymnal, new catechism, and new curriculum. Questions? Anybody have any questions? Yes?
This is really a silly little question, but that first seminary building, I think the date was around 1895. Why did they call it Coffee Mill? Cafe music?
Coffee, because it looks like one.
Okay.
It looks like a coffee mill. Any other questions? Okay, I'm done with my allotted time. Sorry to slip over some of these things. It's been my privilege to work on this history with Professor Joel Otto at the seminary. We collaborated on the picture book that you see. And I hope that if you're interested in the church history, there's a lot of pictures. It's not so much, it is text. I had to write the text, and so did Joel. But we hope that the pictures will draw you into that. It's interesting.
Thank you for being here with us today. Who's got the two books right now so we can make sure we get those back? One's over there, one's there. If you'd like to see those, come up here and take a look. We've got a couple minutes before worship starts again. So thank you for coming and being part of the WELS. Hopefully you're seeing it not just as some kind of administrative structure, but it's a way of connecting people who share the same faith. And then we're able to work together in ways we couldn't if we were just here by ourselves, especially with missions and with training workers. There are things we can do together with other churches that share our same faith that we could never do if it was just us. So we're celebrating 175 years of that kind of work. So thanks for coming. God bless the rest of your day.